Hello, BookTube. Sorry for the surfeit of videos today. I want to make a quick update here on FFS, February Fantasy Stories. It is an event thought up by the Bookish Bryants. Got a bunch of great co-hosts involved in celebrating fantasy fiction in the month of February in the same way that we did New World's November for science fiction. And that is by way of short stories. It's been a lot of fun to watch the various videos. It's been a lot of fun to do the reading, which is broken up into categories. Classical fantasy, for the first week, anything written before 1971. Then the middle two are dark fantasy or grimdark and sword and sorcery. I believe week 2 is sword and sorcery. And then the final one is urban fantasy. If you need that kind of guidance, not ironclad, you don't have to use it if you don't want to. Just reading some short fantasy is the key. Short being anything under 250 pages. And I was off like gangbusters in the first week. I was making a bunch of videos, and then I got waylaid. I got sidetracked badly by two different things. One was I went up to Vermont for what I thought was going to be a 1-week vacation, and then a massive snowstorm hit Boston, and that made it a 2-week vacation. While I was up there, I got a friend who scouted me into a whole lot of unexpected work to do. And I was no sooner done than I had a deadline, an actual deadline of my own, moved up by a drastically large segment of time, so that suddenly it was right on my doorstep. Those two things, that kind of work plus being somewhere else, preoccupied me and distracted me from FFS, which feels a little weird because I'm one of the co-hosts. I shouldn't be distractible from an event that I'm helping to co-host. I'll leave a link to the Bookish Bryants so you can see what we're talking about. If I remember, I'll leave a link to a couple of my earlier videos. I did a couple of videos that a lot of you have liked, conceptualizing kind of videos and a master list of great fantasy. But there's another thing that waylaid me as well, and I blame the Bookish Bryants because they were doing a discussion video, a launch video about FFS. And they were bantering back and forth. If you've watched their channel, you know that's a feature of their channels. They banter back and forth. And at one point, Dracula came up. Bram Stoker's Dracula came up as an example of dark fantasy, which would certainly be true. It certainly is dark fantasy. It's not grimdark, but it's certainly dark fantasy, one of the original wildly popular examples of dark fantasy. And I think it was Scott who wasn't all that wild about including Dracula at all in the subject, and it's a little long. The book is a little long. It doesn't fall out of the page heading. But Becky was saying, I think it was Becky saying, I could have their roles reversed in this discussion. But I think she was saying, no, perfectly well. It counts. Absolutely, it's fine. And my first thought was, well, yeah, I guess Dracula would count as dark fantasy if I didn't have so much else to read, because I've read Dracula probably 1,000 times in my life. Probably, no exaggeration, no hyperbole. I've probably read it 1,000 times. There's no excuse for me ever to read the novel Dracula again, much less to read it for an event that's all about fantasy short stories. So can you guess what the next obstacle was to me joining this? I bet you can, can't you? Yeah, I immediately reread Dracula. I just dove right into it. It was totally inexcusable, not only because I was under a crushing deadline, but because there's no reason for me to read Dracula when, especially in an event where I'm supposed to be concentrating on shorter works. So I'm going to make up for it this week. Starting, I'm gonna write the rest of this week off for FFS, but I'm going to dive right in. I'll get my prompts right. I think the prompt for next week, I believe, is grimdark, dark fantasy. I think this week was sword and sorcery. I could have that wrong. If next week is sword and sorcery, you can count on a lot of that. I will go through. This is sort of the unofficial textbook for our read along. Everybody's got a copy of this book and is really enjoying it. It's a wonderful, wonderful anthology. Lord knows where mine is. Glad I have an e-copy. mine is just gone. I had it, reviewed it, and it's. I must have sent it to one of you. Maybe one of the hosts is holding up the copy that I sent them. But I'm going to make up for lost time, whatever next week's prompt is. I know the 4th week is urban fantasy. Whatever next week's prompt is, I am going to make up for lost time. I promise you that I am still an active host of FFS. Maybe Scott and Becky and I could do another live stream. The last one was a lot of fun. I'll put it to them in our Voxer session. But anyway, I wanted to remind you the event is still going on. Feel free to dig into any fantasy anthology that you have. Read along any of the prompts or just read anything. Read any short work of fantasy to sort of Flex the Fantasy Muscles in the month of February before we move on to March, and a whole bunch of other things. Your calendar is now completely ruled by BookTube. I just wanted to mention, get my oar back in the water here. On the weekend or on Monday, I will start making more FFS videos, but I wanted to remind you that it's happening and let you know why I've fallen off the wagon. Those obstacles are done. I am finished with my deadline. I conquered it. And I'm finished with Dracula. And I am resisting the urge to read Anno Dracula by Kim Newman as an example of urban fantasy. That is, it's way too long, and I've read it a million times, so no. It's going to be newer stuff. So I'll wrap this up for now. Encourage you all to join. I'll try to leave all the pertinent links down below. And I will see you for FFS this weekend or early next week. Thank you, BookTube.